right, let's talk about AEW from July 20th. Get that out of the way, and then we can get to they put their best talent and their best matches on the pay-per-views for the secondary company they own that doesn't really exist. So we're going to do that last. We'll get through the national cable television show with almost, not quite, 1 million viewers that they hit the bed on here very briefly. And I didn't take a lot of notes on some of these matches, but we'll try to get through this thing. Darby Allin versus Brody King was the opening contest, and little did we know this would be the best thing that they did all night, because everything else went down the hill from here. Did you see the Meltzer Fears Mama Cornette sign in neon green at the start of the match? Thank you to whoever you are. She would have loved that. And, of course, it's Darby Allin, it's Brody King of the House of the Black Folks. So they ring the bell, they immediately go to the floor and have a fight. Then they get back in the ring, and Darby gets wiped out. And from there on, Brody King just beats the piss out of him. Lays the chops in, lays the blows, and ragdolled him like a sack of shit. Treated him like a dog toy out on the floor, throwing him into the rails and etc. And this was actually, it's entertaining to watch a big beast like that throw some little guy around. But then they went through the break. And they come back on the other side of the break, and it's still going on. And finally, this wasn't even a comeback because Brody stopped him again, but at one point, Darby Allin rolls out on the floor, reaches under the ring, gets his belt, and I'm not talking about a championship belt, I'm talking about a belt that holds your pants up, and when Brody King comes over to get him, he throws that belt around Brody King's legs and trips him and pulls him out on the floor and hog ties him, all in front of the referee. There was no disqualification called. How can... I understand if you come up with a cute spot, right, that you think, oh, this would be cute. People would pop on this. But if you're writing a song and you come up with a great lyric, but it doesn't fit the song, you save it and do it later, right? If you're writing a book and you realize in the middle of this book, boy, I got another story here, I'll do that later when it fits. But no, and then at that point, Brody King shuts him down, gives him more abuse. Then Brody misses a flip into the turnbuckle, and immediately Darby Allin's 100% again. And this is the way it went on for a couple minutes. Every time that Brody King would miss something, even though Darby Allin had been beaten like a drum for the previous 5 minutes, he would suddenly jump up and start running fine, showing no effects, and then get shut down again and sell. And then it was a great spot you can only do with a 140-pound guy, but Brody King grabbed Darby Allin in a sleeper on the apron of the ring and hung him off the apron with his feet fucking hanging. And then finally, and this is, I was going to ask you, have we missed something? Is Darby Allin, does he have heat with somebody? Is somebody mad at him? Has he been accused of something? Because he's one of the guys, along with MJF and Wardlow, that had never been on television before, and to a lesser extent than them because they've been featured in key shit, the people like Darby because he's, I mean, you can tell, we know he's really a complete idiot. He does this shit to himself on purpose, doesn't give a fuck whether he hurts himself or not, jumps off bridges, blah, blah, blah. But he's got charisma, and people like him because he's a little underdog. So after this manhandling, Brody King picks him up over his shoulder and drops him right on his head nearly with a spike power bomb, 1, 2, 3. It looked great. And I watched it, and Brody King did have control of a 140-pound opponent. But if he ever tries to do that to anybody else, we're going to witness a tragedy. So boom, 1, 2, 3. And then he gets the sleeper on Darby Allin again. After the match, Sting comes out, and they start to get in a fight, and Sting goes to give him the Scorpion Death Drop, and the lights go out. And when lights come back on, Malachi Black is in the ring, and he and Sting are face-to-face, but Brody King, who just got Scorpion Death dropped, comes from behind Sting and grabs him in a sleeper. Brian, did you see what was the matter with this when he grabbed Sting in a sleeper, Brody King from behind, and Malachi Black in front of him blows the mist into Sting's face, barely? What was the matter with that?
I don't know.
Why the fuck wouldn't Brody King have gotten mist in his eyes too? His head was on top. It was a sleeper. Both their faces were right there. They couldn't figure ahead of time that the visual was, well, you've just blown mist in both these guys' faces, except you didn't really see any mist because he doesn't know how to blow the fucking mist at this point. But otherwise, the first half of that was okay to watch the little fella get thrown around like he was bowling with midgets. And then it just dovetailed into bleh. What'd you think?
I thought it went a little long because it got uncomfortable for me after a while seeing Darby just get manhandled like this. Obviously, these two must be friends. The fact that he's allowing him to do this. I saw some other angle they did at an autograph signing where Darby got his ass kicked by Brody King. The pile driver at the end looked really stiff. Why didn't Sting give him the Scorpion Death Drop? Did he let him go when the lights went out?
No, you heard the clump. Even the announcer said, well, wait, we heard the thump.
Okay, I didn't even notice it. Okay.
Because they mistimed the blackout.
I don't know why. It's not a new thing. I don't know why Darby's been booked like this for a long time. I don't even know when it started, but he's a guy who got over on his own. They gave him Sting. And I feel like he's always booked horribly on TV.
Well, and then I forgot the end of this segment. So the heels, Malachi Black and Brody King, have beaten up Darby, and then they missed Sting, and music plays, and out comes Miro. We haven't seen Miro in a while. Here comes Miro. Apparently now Miro, the guy who wants to evict God from his premises, is a babyface. And he's not going to be happy with the folks in the House of Black because he comes out and he and the heels stare at each other and they go to the break. So Darby and Sting, I guess, were taken to a medical facility because they were nowhere to be seen. And now all the attention is on Miro and old Malachi having a stare down. Starks and Hobbs were in the back talking to some new guy that can't talk. And it's going to be Starks versus that guy tonight. I had no idea who this guy was. They mentioned his name once at the top. I didn't want to rewind and take more of my time to find out. I'm going to go through the next match quickly. It was the Puddin' Gang with Pockets in their corner against Wheeler, Yuta, and Plumber Moxley. And so now is everybody in AEW a babyface? Because now here's more baby faces fighting each other. And it was not lost on everybody last week, the Wardlow and Pockets match. Even the people who normally defend Tony and his bizarre booking methods were like, what the fuck is this? And now what the so we want to see the babyface Blackpool Combat Club beat up other babyfaces, including the mascot who's allegedly popular. The only good thing about this, and by the way, this thing it must have been 20 minutes. It was 15 easily. The worst team in the entire promotion gets 15 or 20 minutes against the Blackpool Combat Club. And the only redeeming factor was, did you notice they're now making Muffin Top Taylor wear a singlet to cover up the muffin top? Because he had branched out into an entire bakery.
No, the only good thing about the match was the fans got silent in the middle of it. And that kind of sends the message. No one wanted to see this, and no one wants to see the best friends. Even the people that like the irony of Orange Cassidy, whatever you want to call it, they'd be fine with the best friends not being there. They add nothing to AEW.
Well, next up, It's Shark Week, Brian. Is the Shark Week or the Shark Show or what kind of, that's not for TBS. Isn't that for is that Discovery or something?
Same family.
Okay, but point is, so they go to the announce desk, and who was there at that point? It was Sockface and Taz and the shark mascot, the Shark Week mascot, a guy in a shark outfit. And with the guy in the shark outfit and Taz and Sockface there, the guy in the shark outfit was only the second stupidest looking person at the desk. But they had to get Shark Week mentioned, and then they had a Swerve in Our Glory celebration. Because, of course, as we all know, the Hardley boys, the Cucamonga kids, instead of doing the right thing for business and having a pay-per-view match with FTR and dropping the rubber match and the final remaining set of belts to them for the good of the company, because FTR is not only now the best in-ring tag team in wrestling, but also the most over one in AEW. Instead, they decided to swerve everybody, no pun intended, and put the belts on Swerve, Strickland, and Keith Lee to avoid doing a job to a team that everybody considers better than they are. And this celebration also included a cake at ringside. Now, here we go. I'm going to tell you what's wrong with the cake business in a second. So Tony Schiavone's conducting the interview with Swerve and Keith, and they pointed out a guy named Kevin Gates at ringside. I said, will they identify him? And they did. He's a recording artist. Have you ever heard of him?
I've heard of him, yes.
Is he any good?
You would not probably like that.
I was wondering what he was doing there, if he was anybody important. So Swerve did a pretty good promo. He's well-spoken, but then ended kind of abruptly, just out of nowhere. And then Keith Lee took over, and I want to hear an album of Keith Lee's greatest mellow rock hits, because he's got the most melodic cadence and the most sing-song. He and Twinkle Toes could get together and just duet the shit out of, I don't know, Doris Day's greatest hits. Que sera, sera, whoever we swerve, we swerve. So Keith Lee sang his promo, thanked the fans, and ended on a statement that did he just have a small stroke, or did he say a bunch of words I'm not familiar with quickly all at the same time? What the fuck did he say at the end of that?
I don't recall what he said, so I don't remember.
Do you remember hearing something that you didn't fucking understand?
I actually don't remember that, no.
All right. So anyway, then we knew it was going to happen. Here comes Mark Sterling and Tony Nese. So Mark Sterling is the fake comedy lawyer that has no heat whatsoever and is just put out there to be made a buffoon. And Tony Nese is the hottest free agent in wrestling that never wrestles on this program. Ever. And they come out and they basically are there as flunkies. So first of all, he insults the singer, and the singer knocks Tony Nese out with one punch. So the hot free agent wrestler just got knocked out by a fucking recording artist. And since Mark Sterling is the goddamn manager, and there's a cake out there, then Mark Wrestling Logic, from people who just watch YouTube and don't understand, requires that cake go in his face, and Swerve hits Sterling in the face with the cake. When you cake somebody that nobody cares about to begin with, then it's just a goddamn Nickelodeon fucking outtake. You fucking idiots. If you fucking put MJF's face in a cake, they would probably remember that years later, and it would be on his highlight reel. Because the people would fucking love it, because they hate MJF's pomposity and want to see somebody get taken down a peg or two that they really dislike. Mark Sterling just got a dry cleaning bill. That's all that you got out of that. booking is not just rehashing shit from the past that you've seen on tape. It's doing it with the right people and in a situation that looks like it emerges organically, or elsewise you're doing a silent movie spoof. And here's another thing. People are going to say, Cornette, you got hit with cake after cake. You're absolutely right. And I not only fit the parameters that I just discussed, I was the fucking guy in a territory that had the most heat that they wanted to see humiliated the most, and that did it, and that led to ticket sales, and that led to fucking business, and that led to us making money. But also, I didn't get hit but with one cake on national television. Because once you, like the old fucking vaudeville comics, once you got on TV and did your routine, everybody'd seen it. But in vaudeville, you could do it every night for years. I got hit with a cake in Georgia that people in Georgia saw. I got hit with a cake in goddamn, in the TBS studio, was on national TV. I got hit with a cake in Shreveport that the Mid-South wrestling fans saw. But that doesn't mean that you can just hit the manager with a cake on TV every so often and it not get old like everything else. You have to remember who's seen it.
It's also important to remember you got hit with a cake in 84. It led to the biggest run in the history of the territory. You got hit with a cake in 88. It led to a hot run with the Fantastics, great matches. What did this lead to? What did this build to? Or was it just a throwaway thing? And
no, I know what it led to. The commercial.
This whole episode, though, between this and Stokely Hathaway, who's a really talented talker, but has zero heat, just got shoved aside by someone. This whole episode is a problem with AEW and managers. You got to see they don't know how to use managers.
Where's Tully? Where's Vicky Guerrero?
Ring of Honor, and I don't know.
There's been a number of managers that have just kind of floated past. Okay, explain this one to me, what happened next. Christian Cage and Dino Douche in a tag team match against Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman, the Varsity Blondes. And obviously last week it was that Dino just beat the piss out of old Griff and squashed Brian Pillman a couple of times trying to beat up Griff. So now they've got a tag team match. And they did, this was probably the most perfect thing I've seen on AEW television in months. They start the match. Dino does a couple of passable big man spots. Christian tells Dino to chokeslam Pillman. Then he tells him to chokeslam Griff on top of Pillman. This time they did it safely, believe it or not. And then Christian comes in and covers Pillman 1, 2, 3 and steals the win that his big meat-headed enforcer had made possible for him. Perfect. It didn't take a couple minutes. It was the perfect time, perfect finish, perfect result for what they're doing. And then here comes Baltimore. And we've been wondering where Jungle Boy was and why he was allowing all these things to be said about him, and he was getting no rebuttal, and he was not making his presence known. So now you would think, well, here comes Jungle Boy, right? He's going to come tearing down there, and he's going to light into that Christian Cage, and then Dino's going to stop him from behind, and they're going to get some heat on him, and then we're going to see Jungle Boy versus Dino, and if he can beat that fucking giant monster, he'll get his hands on Christian Cage. We can sink our teeth into this. Jungle Boy comes out in ill-fitting street clothes, carrying a folding chair and walking like he's going to fucking get the mail. Just coming down, no fire. And Dino gets out of the ring to get in the aisleway to meet him. And Jungle Boy walks up to Dino. And Dino steps aside and lets Jungle Boy run into the ring after Christian Cage. 2 weeks after he turned on him. 1 week after Dino started doing Christian's bidding. What the fuck? And Jungle Boy rolls into the fucking ring to get to chase Christian Cage down and get even with him. And when Christian bails out, Jungle Boy drops the chair that he brought, so that worked, and just chases him up the stairs out of the arena through the breezeway, while Dino stands there and watches the whole thing. And off they went. What the fuck happened here? They had okay, Christian Cage. He's a heel. He's doing the best promos in the company. And he's got this giant monster with him that can be his enforcer and take care of his physical business. And it is the first time that we've ever had one goddamn good thing to say about that jacked up, tattooed imbecile that thinks he's a fucking dinosaur. And suddenly he's a player in the wrestling business for about a week. Until now, he changed his mind. He didn't mean to turn on Jungle Boy and align himself with Christian and fucking hurt all those people at Christian's behest, including 90 seconds previously. Instead, oh no, have at him. What the I don't know whether they're on drugs they don't need to be on or they're not on drugs they need to be on. But why can't any of this make sense from week to week?
I don't think there are any drugs that deal with quality control. Christian has all of a sudden become a serious heel, delivering serious material, some real zingers, but in a serious way. Comes across like a heel. And now we've seen him run away. This whole plan has been foiled. He looks like just another jerk-off. I didn't like the way this was done, and I was finally intrigued by Luchasaurus, and they turned him right back. And thank God Jungle Boy had them cue his music to come out. I don't know what would have happened if the music hadn't played.
Well, let's not jump too far ahead, as Stephanie said, because the music cue gets more ridiculous. The next match is an open challenge for the FTW title between Ricky Starks and the generic, bland-looking white boy from earlier, who apparently is named Cole Carter. Carter with a K. And the announcers, as this thing started, were trying to talk, and I know Taz was there, so he should be, but the announcers were legitimately, including JR, trying to talk the FTW title up as a real belt, something that people win and lose and want to have, which is the polar opposite of not only what it actually is, but what it should be for the Heat. They made their own belt. That's a classic heel move. And I'm not an ECW expert, but I seem to remember that they did that with Taz because somebody else held the ECW title and there had been some dispute over a match that they'd had, and Taz declared himself the fuck the world champion. Have I summarized that briefly but succinctly?
Yeah, it was a belt created for Taz and ECW.
Yes. So Tony Khan, being a mark for 90s wrestling, so let's bring the FTW title back. And Taz obviously had the belt because it was his belt. So that's not a problem. Use it for business. But the way you use it is it's not real. The heel is out there crowing that he's the FTW champion because whatever issue he had with the company, they won't give him a title match, or his title match ended in confusion because the referee made the wrong mistake or whatever. So I'm a champion and I'm going to show y'all. And then he defends it, quote unquote, on his own, even though the company doesn't sanction it, blah, blah, blah. That's where the Heat comes in. Now they're trying to act like this is a real title, which is the last thing they need to do because they've got the AEW title. They got the TBS title. They got the TNT title. They got the Ring of Honor title. They have the FTW title. They got the All Asian Pacific fucking Dead Sea title. I haven't even gone into tags yet. So, anyway, Starks is great. Cole Carter is green and generic, physically looks better than most of the AEW undercard guys. I guess he didn't come from the indies because they all have the same look. And Ricky Starks won, which he should have. But then he gets on the microphone, Starks does, and says, I'm not going to let it end here. I'm going to keep the open challenge going. And even Taz says, I didn't know he was going to do this. Give me somebody else to wrestle. Within 5 seconds after Ricky Starks has the idea that he's going to continue and wrestle somebody else, the music plays. Talk about a music cue. It wasn't even 5 seconds. The audio guy had his finger hovering over the button. And it's music, and it's Danhausen. And Danhausen comes out doing the promo in his voice. And not only does he accept the challenge, but then Starks waffles and backs down. Well, but I didn't mean right now. Maybe next week. Suddenly you went from Ricky Starks having a match with a job guy to get over to Danhausen coming out and the real wrestler being scared of him, and it turns into a local indie comedy show on cable access with guys in funny outfits. They can't even do something right and then not fuck it up before they go to commercial. So I fast forwarded it until I saw somebody I liked. By the way, I'm not meaning to steamroller you. I'm just trying to get through this.
No.
Did you see anything I've neglected?
I wasn't very happy that was who confronted Ricky Starks, who I'm incredibly high on. Him and Hobbs are great. But, this is the problem since Punk and MJF have been gone, and Bryan Danielson. We've seen more of the things that some of the hardcore AEW fans like, but some of us are not real big fans of, like Orange Cassidy and Danhausen and just goofy stuff. The TV has changed since a lot of these guys have been gone. Not for the better.
Not for the better. So I stopped fast forwarding when we got to Tony Schiavone in the ring with FTR. And they're talking about the Briscoes, 2 out of 3 falls, the rematch. Tonight, as we speak. And Jim Ross compared FTR to the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, Tully and Arn, Jack and Jerry Briscoe, and he's very apt in those comparisons. But what did everybody gloss over, Brian, about this interview and this announcement?
What did everyone gloss over about the interview Dax did about his daughter?
Well, yeah, but I'm going to get into the interview in a second, but just the announcement talking about this match, rematch, 2 out of 3 falls with the Briscoes. I don't think they said Mark and Jay. I think it said the Briscoes.
Are you going to say that Mark and Jay have not been mentioned or seen on TV before this?
They announced a rematch of a match that was held on another program that was not ever recapped or clipped or highlighted on this television, nor have Mark and Jay Briscoe's faces or voices ever appeared on this television show. And they just went right by and assumed, and everybody knows when you assume, you make an ass of you and me. They assume everybody watching would know who the Briscoes are, even though they've never been on the show and never been seen on the program in any kind of tape or VTR or whatever. I think their names might have been mentioned a time or two in relation to the first match with FTR. Now, luckily, AEW doesn't have anybody watching this program that doesn't know who all their people are, because nobody would take that amount of time to do that out of their life except somebody that already loved this shit, which is the problem. If anybody accidentally was watching this show for the first time and all they've ever seen is WWE because they got fucking lives, kids, jobs, whatever, they're going, wait, rematch Briscoe, who the fuck is that? Sure, can we hear from him? Can we see him? Can we put a face to this name that we're hearing? So they're promoting a pay-per-view from a company that doesn't technically exist anymore on a television show and talking about people that are going to be on that pay-per-view that have never appeared on this television show. And we still want to see the match.
Yeah, we still want to see the match, and it'll still get 100,000 buys, which is remarkable. And In this case, we know why Tony can't feature the Briscoes. There's nothing he can do.
How in the world can you not show footage of something that happened in another company as and to promote a fucking pay-per-view that's not going to happen on their air? What the fuck? At some point, you've got to say, hey, these goddamn guys apologized. You were pissed at them. Well, they've apologized multiple times. And besides that, they'll help our ratings. Have you not noticed? Our television show sucks a cock. It's a shits. It stinks. And we need talent. But anyway, speaking of talent, Cash started the promo. They're doing babyface promos now, and he did a good job of it. And his point was, we respect you, Briscoes, but you're not taking these from us. And then Dax got in. And I didn't know this story was real and that it happened to him, but he talked about an 8-year-old girl with a hole in her heart. And I'm not even going to try to do this justice. Go back and watch this promo. This was not only the best FTR promo ever, this was the best 3 minutes of promo ever on AEW television. It would have been the best 3 minutes of promo possibly on WWE television in the last 10 years, maybe longer. It was real, and I got goosebumps, and the people listened to it, and they reacted in the right place. It was his 8-year-old daughter with a hole in her heart. And she's well now, and that got a big round of applause. But she fought, and she persevered, and she overcame that. And the whole point of the promo, the go-home line was, Saturday night, Briscoes, I'm going to fight like an 8-year-old girl. I'm getting goosebumps now. That was brilliant. Not only amazing that he could say it that well, and especially since obviously his daughter, he has to be emotional, and he was somewhat, it helped, but also the way to articulate that and bring it into applying it to wrestling was genius. That's the only thing if somebody said, would you ever watch any of this television program again, even if people offered you money, I'd say no, but I will watch this promo over and over again for free and maybe even pay you. And if we had more shit like this in the business, it'd be better off.
And I'd say how much. This was fantastic. I want to know, and if you haven't, I hope you get a chance to before we watch the pay-per-view tonight. Did you see the sit-down that was on YouTube and on Twitter? Or not Twitter. Yeah, it was on Twitter. FTR, the Briscoes, Caprice Coleman, and a bottle of tequila?
I did not see that.
You need to see that. I saw it in between last week's Dynamite and this week's Dynamite. And my first thought was, this is better than anything they had on Dynamite. Again, I understand Tony's hands are tied with the Briscoes, but you need to see this. This was great.
Well, and I will look that up before tonight. But anyway, I could have ended the show right there and been happy. And
no,
I wish they could have too. But here comes Jane Cargill, Malcolm Bivens, and a baddie. I think it was Kiera Hogan. Yeah,
she's all right.
She's very small. And they had some guy with them. And apparently Layla Gray is injured. I mean, we need to do an updated injury list on these people, but because half the roster or more is down and out. But they said Layla Gray is injured and Statlander is banned from ringside. And of course, Jane mentioned that she's always that bitch. Why does she want to call herself a bitch? That used to be a derogatory
She doesn't.
term.
She doesn't want to call herself a bitch. She wants to call herself that bitch.
Well, being that bitch is even worse than being a bitch. That bitch is even more bitchy than just your regular bitch. What about if Marlo Thomas, instead of being that girl, could have been that bitch? Sunshine, that bitch. Anyway, it's that bitch. And suddenly she's on the TV for you.
I like too when she points it out. She's like, My family's in the audience, and you know I'm that bitch. I'm like, what? Your kid's listening, lady.
So this was Jane Cargill and Kiera Hogan against Willow Nightingale and Athena. And apparently the guy with Bivens is Jermaine Dupree. And he's somebody, apparently.
Yeah, he's a big deal. Big-time producer. Very successful.
Who'd he ever beat up?
He's never beat anyone, but he's a pretty big star, and he's from Atlanta, so that's why they had him on the show.
Okay. So this was started out as a training school girls tag team match where they tried to do a lot of stuff and some dangerous dives. And poor Kiera Hogan, they kept trying to squish her because the bigger girls were just falling on her with all their body weight. And then suddenly, Willow and Kiera disappeared, and it was Jane and Athena. And they got the people, and they started doing some good shit. And it wasn't bad, and the people were really reacting to it. And then the other two showed back up, and then it went back to girls' training school tag team match, and I lost really interest in what the fuck was happening. And Jane hit her finish 1, 2, 3 on Willow Nightingale.
Well, there was also some action at ringside with the manager, and that was one of the things I wanted to hear what you thought about.
I didn't even pay any attention. What the fuck did he do?
Why watch the match if you're not going to see that?
Well, because I mean, what the fuck? I wasn't expecting to see anything that I would care to talk about in this, and I didn't. But what did I miss?
You know, he's a heel manager. He goes out there and he does promos, and he could talk.
Yes, we mentioned that. He's very glib, and he's great. He could talk if he had anything to talk about and a show to talk on.
But he talks in a way to get people to pop for him as opposed to getting people to not like him. And he's at ringside managing the heels. I forget who came to ringside. Maybe Statlander. Just comes and just kind of like pushes him aside, and he just doesn't fall down or anything. He just walks around. And I'm like, what the hell? The other manager gets a cake in the face. He has no heat. No one cares. This manager, another heel manager, the other girl comes out, just shoves him away. He just walks around. No one knows what to do with managers there.
Well, that's it. Again, I guess Bivens or Stokely or whatever, he's better for Jane than Sterling was, but who wouldn't be? But they can't. He came from NXT where he had no heat, and they've put him with, you know, they've got to put, if you have a manager who's not with a top guy, figured into the finishes, figured into the fucking promos, etc., then you've just booked yourself an undercard manager that's never going to get over. A manager doesn't get over unless he's managing top talent. Then talent can get over because they're managed by a top manager, a la when they would put new guys in the AWA territory with Bobby Heenan, because he was already over. So then you put a heel with him, and it helps that heel. But Bobby Heenan got over by managing top guys, Blackjack Lanza, Blackjack Mulligan, the Valiant Brothers, Baron Von Raschke, Ernie Ladd. Then, you know, he was already over by the time he got to work for Vern and went with Bockwinkel and Stevenson, etc. But no, it doesn't matter how good the guy can talk. When he's with, you know, heels that are underneath, or Jane doesn't know how to get a lick of heat. She's brand new to begin with, but they present her as a star, but not a heel. She's not cheating to win. She's beating everybody. She calls herself a bitch. That's the heeliest thing she does. And normally heels would be calling other people bitches. So the manager's not going to have any heat. You want to get to the main event that really didn't have any heat except with the boys in the locker room and anybody that cares about the wrestling business?
What a spectacle this is. And we've pointed out over the last several years about Chris Jericho, the way these feuds have gone, where things that should finish the feud happen in the middle of the feud, gimmick matches that make no sense happen. Jericho always comes out on top for no good reason. And this was kind of like the greatest hits of the worst of Chris Jericho all in one match.
It only took 15 minutes, but this was 15 of the most embarrassing minutes that pro wrestling has ever seen. Because, like you said, they got everything in this one. The match is called Barbed Wire Everywhere. And they had barbed wire around the ring, and they had barbed wire tables in the ring, and tables with barbed wire outside on the floor, and the microphone, the public address microphone was wrapped in barbed wire. And Jericho comes out with a barbed wire baseball bat, and they had barbed wire chairs. And what this proved basically was you got Eddie Kingston and Chris Jericho with all those implements, and it takes 10 minutes to hurt anybody. They're both a bunch of pussies. What the fuck? And this also, by the way, no DQ, lazy booking, no time limit, blah, blah, blah. And because it's Shark Week, Jericho's minions are going to be hung in a shark cage over the ring. So they're stealing another old wrestling stipulation that actually drew big money when it was done right. So they put Hager and Garcia and Daddy Mac Daddy and Cool Hand Luke in the cage and raise them over the ring. And the first thing I'm thinking is, where's Sammy Guevara? And the announcer said, well, we haven't seen him since he got knocked off the top of the thing or whatever. Well, that's a reason why we'll probably see him in a few minutes. So Ruby Soho, Kingston's lifelong friend and soulmate, has not only the key, but the lifting mechanism to lift the shark cage up and down. So Kingston can get his revenge for her while she keeps the other people at bay. Jericho comes out with that Painmaker thing. It was cute in Japan, I guess. God almighty. And immediately they start. Kingston hits Jericho with the barbed wire microphone. Jericho goes down, goes to his wrist, and guys, I'm not lying. Go watch the video. It's not like the Zapruder film. You don't have to analyze this. It's on high definition television. Jericho goes down, pulls his blade from his wrist, and starts gigging on camera. So the director, realizing this, cuts to a different camera shot so you can see it better. I had a person who shall remain nameless who's been involved in the professional wrestling industry for a number of years contact me and say nobody knows how to fucking blade anymore and Jericho's embarrassing. And I have to agree with that.
I can't believe Vince got in touch with you to say that.
Well, he was mulling over his retirement. So now Jericho's bleeding, and Kingston gets more barbed wire. They go to the floor, and the ring bell was wrapped in barbed wire. Jericho hit Kingston with it. And here came the sign in fluorescent green, Outlaw Mud Show. And boy, it was. And I'm going to reference an article that our friends at PW Insider did in a minute, but let me finish recapping. So Jericho gave Kingston a Hurricane Rana off the top buckle into a barbed wire board as a break spot. And they go to the break. When they come back, it's a sloppy, phony looking fight. And Kingston's back is all cut up from this ridiculousness. And they're on the apron and they're teasing, taking a bump off the ring onto a barbed wire table. And then Kingston vertical suplexes Jericho off the apron and both go through the barbed wire. And I wrote, this is so embarrassing. Jericho used to be a star. Then here comes Ty Conti to ringside. And old TC gets on Ruby Soho. And then here comes old Anna Jay, who, as we will recall, was friends with old Ty until a couple weeks ago when they turned on each other, had some issue. And then Anna Jay turns back on Ruby Soho and joins up with Ty Conti again. So a lot of these people are very fickle. And so they beat up Ruby Soho. They lower the shark cage with the heels in it.
What? You're forgetting a big part.
Well, they've got the key, too.
By this point, the fans were groaning.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's abominable. This is rotten. And the people are just grumbling, as you mentioned, and groaning while all this is transpiring in front of them. But the best part that really, now they started to giggle. At least they entertained the fans with this, because Ty Conti got the key and couldn't unlock the padlock on the shark cage to let the heels out. And she's fiddling and she's fiddling and she's fiddling. And finally, Brian, I know you know because you saw it, but I will surprise the fans listening with the method in which the heels got out of the shark cage. You want to tell them or you want me to tell them?
Oh, please, you tell them.
I'll tell them. They just turned sideways and walked through the bars. I'm not making this up. They locked the heels in a cage so they couldn't interfere in the match. And when the girl was too stupid to turn the key in the padlock and open the door, they just turned sideways and walked through the bars. So now they all got in the ring and got fake, bad-looking heat on Kingston. But then here came all the baby faces, and you couldn't even tell which. Just now it's 10 or 12 guys fighting at ringside. But they got in that big brawl, 10 guys, and then, well, you know what they did, Brian. They fought off. They just fought off. 10 or 12 people are having a fucking wild hayrube all around the ring, and suddenly they've disappeared so that Kingston and Jericho can take more bumps into barbed wire. And everybody else disappears. Then Kingston comes at Jericho with a chair wrapped in barbed wire, swings it like Paul Bunyan. Jericho jumps up and gives Kingston a code breaker. And Kingston's chair comes down on Jericho's face and he breaks his own nose. Then Jericho gets the chair.
Just clarify, you're not using hyperbole. He broke his own nose.
No, he broke his own nose. His nose is broken. And he's the one that did it. His move to Kingston propelled the barbed wire wrapped chair into his own face. And we're not done yet. Because now Jericho gets the chair and hits Kingston with the two fakest, lightest, most obviously worked chair shots in history. Remember when Hulk Hogan did the worst chair shot ever in WCW in 1997? This was worse. And then Kingston comes back from being hit with a barbed wire chair, but not hard, and hits his back fist and gets a 2 count. And then he wraps Jericho up in barbed wire and gets him in a stretch plum. But now here comes Sammy Guevara. And he just jumps in the ring, gets on Kingston. And they're starting to get heat on Kingston again. And there's poor referee Donald Stevens, completely powerless to do anything about this. By the way, did you hear that Aubrey Edwards changed her name to Donald Stevens?
Well, that's the name that people are alleging she uses online to have people have content taken down. She's using a fake name, an alias.
Yes, with addresses tied to the AEW offices. And apparently she's All Elite, though, because one of the signs also was Don Stevens is All Elite. So then Jericho hits a Judas elbow with barbed wire wrapped around his elbow. And again, that's where my DVR froze. Because they were so drastically low on time, they weren't trying to run over again. They're just always low on time because they can't manage their time. So I had to watch the clip of the finish on Twitter, and I can't describe to you what they were trying to do because they were going to do a thing where it was Sammy and Jericho were going to hold Kingston, but Kingston was going to do some kind of duck, and their shit was going to backfire. But by the time they botched it once, and then Eddie kind of halfway turned around and shoved somebody, it ended up looking like that Sammy just hauled off and punched Jericho in the face while he was looking at him for no reason. And then Jericho beat Eddie Kingston, because there's not going to be anybody that's ever actually going to get over in a program with Jericho. But then Kingston responded by throwing Jericho into a netting or webbing of barbed wire where he could lay there and sell in a spastic fashion. And then they went off the air. Was this... I think because of the timing, this wasn't the worst match ever on AEW. Imagine how much territory that takes in. But because of the timing and what they're doing to themselves, the self-inflicted wounds to their own feet, this could have been the worst thing they ever did. It was embarrassing. It was phony looking, obviously outlaw, wrong guy won, all the gimmicks misfired, didn't work, wouldn't open, whatever the case. Guy broke his own nose. What the fuck else could they have done in one segment to fuck anything else up?
The run that Chris Jericho's on is especially bad. He's had so many bad moments in AEW, so many of the most embarrassing matches and moments he's been right in the middle of, and they've come from his head. But especially lately, Tony has just been letting him run unleashed. And this unleashed Chris Jericho is unwatchable. This was embarrassing. This was bad. It was sloppy, embarrassing sloppy, not just regular sloppy. Eddie Kingston has not come out of this feud looking... The feud's not even done. They're not even done with the feud. Come out of the feud. They're still in the middle of this.
Remember when Kingston could have been the hottest thing in wrestling if they'd have just capitalized on that one article? Speaking of articles, hey, I'm going to close up with this because we've been here for a while and we've still got to get to the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. So I'm going to close up on this sad chapter in American history with this. Dave Shearer at pwinsider.com just a couple of days ago, if anybody wants to check it out, find it, wrote an article about AEW and this barbed wire bullshit. And Dave doesn't like blood at all in wrestling. And he said, now with what we know about bloodborne diseases, we shouldn't do it at all. I disagree with him there because you need blood in wrestling because it's violence and it's combat. And if it's done right and you can't see through it, then blood is absolutely necessary in certain occasions, but only when people know what they're doing and it's a main match with money-drawing talent, then it means something. Elsewise, it's just this indie mark bullshit where they get a kick. Oh, look, like Britt Baker wanted to get juice on TV, so Uncle Dave would give her stars or fucking planets or moons or whatever. But Dave wrote in this article, it's so unnecessary not only to not run fans off who don't want to see this outlaw deathmatch garbage bullshit, but it's the stupidest thing they could be doing right now with this timing. The WWE is in more business trouble than they've been in the past 25 years. They're getting bad publicity. The leader has stepped down. There's probably turmoil, on the inside as to who's going to be running what, but they're more vulnerable now than they have ever been before. And in 2 years or less, these TV rights fees and deals, which has now replaced selling tickets as the biggest revenue stream for a wrestling promotion. WWE is going to be renegotiating all that shit, and it's supposed to take them even further up the financial ladder. But do the networks want to pay that much money out? Or would the networks be looking around for another wrestling promotion that might at least be able to come into the conversation so there's some negotiating on both sides going on? Well, hey, if you don't want to take our offer, then we're going to go over here and talk to this other wrestling promotion that has a bunch of your names, and it's got between a half and a third of your audience, and that's before we bring it onto our network and do our promotion. It would be a tactic to negotiate that the TV networks could use. Tony Khan could be involved in those conversations, except for the fact that they're so outlaw garbage wrestling minded to appeal to the small subsection of marks that enjoy that kind of thing and don't give a shit about a professional product and don't give a shit about credible stars and don't give a shit about talented people. They just want to see chaos, blood, and train wrecks. That not only is a limited number that has not grown in 3 years, Tony. No matter who you add, something's happened to keep them not coming back for more when you add them. But here, that's the thing is, advertisers and television networks do not want television programs where people are blatantly slicing themselves open with razor blades, and the advertisers especially do not want customers that want to watch people do that. They don't want those kind of people. So all somebody has to do from the WWE, if any TV network or broadcasting facility was going to use AEW as an example, well, hey, we could go with these guys. Well, sure, look what they'd show on your television station and show them obvious cutting with razor blades and people rolling around in barbed wire and women bleeding and everybody saying, Moxley, go fuck yourself. And whatever the fuck, everybody's saying shit. It's a clown show. It's amateur. It's unprofessional. And that would sabotage any effort that Tony would make to go anywhere else besides the company that he had the in with through his position with the Jaguars. And that guy has already left TBS. And it's a whole nother hierarchy now with that merger. So why do this? Do you think any AEW fan is going to say, God damn it, that's it. Where's my hat? Give me my hat, Gomer. I'm throwing my hat down. I'm never watching this show again because I didn't get to see a barbed wire match with a fucking 50-something-year-old goddamn midlife crisis wannabe rock star slicing himself open with a fat guy from New York that could get over by talking, but he's too fucking wrapped up in his Japanese strong style bullshit to know what his talents are. That's a question that some programming executives might be asking. Do we want to look at this shit? Or do we want to put up with the WWE because at least they give us professionalism?
Can you imagine if Frank Sinatra decided to, like, all of a sudden do Gigi Allen's act? That's what Chris Jericho's doing here. He's trying to be something he's not.
Thank you. That's a wonderful simile. What? You would have thought a guy like that could have taught these guys something about how to be more professional and maybe appeal to a broader audience. Instead, because he's got a goddamn crisis going on of whatever, he's dyeing his hair and slicing himself with razor blades, rolling around in barbed wire with his minions locked in a cage that they could get out of if they took a deep breath and held their stomach in.
Can you imagine a panic attack you would have had if you were hoisted up in a cage that you could have just slipped right through the middle?
Fuck, that was the one good thing about the cages I was in. I couldn't get out of them. I wasn't going to fall out of the fucking thing.
Is Chris Jericho, seriously, serious question. Is Chris Jericho the most embarrassing wrestler in the business?
Currently,
the last few years.
I'm thinking it's it's pretty much a no contest at this point.
Remember what you said about Moxley? I mean, you said about Moxley, you called him the worst wrestler in the world. You have to take everything into the equation. His position on the card, how he's used. Look at Jericho. Who's more embarrassing than Chris Jericho?
Well, and that's the thing, because Jericho at one point was a star, was a great talent, was really out there performing at a high level, blah, blah, blah. Moxley, I don't think ever has. So it's even worse for Jericho because he was good. He knows how to do this shit. He was good once. But I don't know what has entered his mind that he thinks that he needs to do this just to appeal to the younger generation, when in actuality, he ought to show the younger generation the appeal of quality professional wrestlers of his generation, and why that the audience was 4 or 5 times bigger when they were all on top. And instead, bleh.
He latched on to hold on. He needed something to hold on to. And he found all these young guys. He didn't go there to bring his expertise. He went there to do every dumb thing he's ever wanted to do.
Well, I think he's pretty much accomplished that. How much more could be on his list? I think he's checked everything off. He's been pushed off high objects onto crash pads. He's gotten juice on TV several times, right out in front of God and everybody. He's all right. Closing thoughts on this match.
And the people he talks into doing this stuff with him. The problem is he talks Tony into going along with this stuff, and then he convinces all of these other guys to go along with it too. And I don't know how many of them truly realize how detrimental it is to them when Chris Jericho latches onto you. Because it's a stink you can't get rid of. It's a BO you can't get out of your car. And MJF's the only one who's successfully gotten away from him and had a fine career since then.
And they used Bonami.
There you go. With a nice throwback to the Ghost and Mr. Chicken.
The horribleness and awfulness of it will never actually be forgotten. And that was AEW. Let's see what they do next week. Maybe it'll be a live fucking beheading. That'll get the networks all fired up to bid for the product.